What if I told you that the famous knight tournaments were not sporting competitions, but a legalized form of murder disguised as a celebration? We are used to seeing romanticized images in movies, where noble warriors compete in skill amid the enthusiastic cheers of the crowd and the waving handkerchiefs of beautiful ladies. However, the reality of the Middle Ages was infinitely far from these Hollywood cliches and represented a harsh struggle for survival. A tournament was a place where the line between glory and oblivion was erased by a single unsuccessful spear thrust or a fall from a horse. It was a real war, only slightly limited by conventional rules, which were often broken in the heat of battle for the sake of victory at any cost. Knights entered the arena fully aware that this day could be their last, but the thirst for status and wealth drove them forward. Watch the video to the end to find out how knights managed to survive in this meat grinder, using tricks that historical novels don't mention. Are you ready to learn the truth about what saved a knight's life more reliably than the thickness of steel? We are used to thinking that survival in a tournament depended solely on the strength of the armor and the physical strength of the warrior hidden beneath it. But in fact, the main secret that allowed a knight to survive a monstrous spear thrust was geometry and the angle of contact between surfaces. The master armorers who created tournament armor were true engineers of their time, understanding the principles of structural analysis long before the emergence of this science. They designed breastplates and helmets in such a way that no surface was perpendicular to the enemy's attack vector. Each detail of the armor had a complex angle designed to cause the tip of the spear to slide to the side, dissipating kinetic energy. If the blow was at a right angle, even the thickest steel could not withstand the enormous pressure concentrated at a single point. Piercing the armor meant certain defeat and severe injury that could end a warrior's career. Therefore, during training, a knight practiced not only striking, but also the correct body position at the moment of impact. He had to be able to instantly turn his body so as to meet the enemy's spear tangentially, turning a deadly thrust into a glancing blow. This required incredible reflexes and a sense of distance, because everything was decided in a fraction of a second at tremendous speed. An error in calculating the angle by even a few degrees could result in the spear not sliding off, but striking the metal with full force. In such a situation, all the energy of the blow would be transferred to the knight's body, leading to broken ribs or damage to internal organs, even without piercing the armor. Particular attention was paid to the shape of the helmet, which often resembled a streamlined bird's beak or a faceted tower. This shape prevented the spear from catching on the viewing slit or the edge of the visor, deflecting the tip to a safe side. Survival in the arena became a complex mathematical problem, where the variables were speed, mass, and angle of attack. Knights who mastered this art of geometric defense could emerge from dozens of duels without a single scratch, while those who relied solely on strength were quickly eliminated. It was a contest of intellect and engineering, not just the brute physical power of two horsemen. The ability to take a blow correctly was valued much more highly among tournament professionals than the ability to simply strike hard. It was this skill that distinguished a veteran, capable of earning a living from tournaments for years, from a novice, risking his head in the very first battle. Even the shield was used not just as a passive barrier, but as an active tool to change the trajectory of the enemy's lance. Its shape and method of attachment to the shoulder were designed so that when struck, it would act like a spring, absorbing some of the energy. The entire complex of weapons and armor was a unified system designed to maximize the chances of survival. And at the center of this system was a person whose cold calculation was more important than rage. We would love to hear your opinion. What do you think about mathematics saving lives in the Middle Ages? Write about it in the comments and be sure to subscribe to the channel.
The northern pass.
What if I told you that a knight's main enemy in a tournament was often not his opponent with a spear? There was a threat that could not be parried with a shield or deflected by the strongest Milanese armor. This invisible and insidious killer was heatstroke, which overtook warriors inside their own steel cocoons. Full tournament armor weighed several dozen kilograms and was a virtually airtight construction of metal and thick quilted fabric. Underneath the top layer of polished steel was a surcoat, a thick jacket stuffed with horsehair or wool to cushion blows. This multi-layered protection excellently absorbed kinetic energy, but at the same time completely blocked the body's heat exchange with the environment. Standing in the sun waiting for his turn, a knight would literally boil in his own juices, losing liters of fluid. The temperature inside a closed helmet could rise to critical levels, turning the warrior's head into a hot oven. In such conditions, the brain began to work more slowly, reactions became dulled, and coordination of movements was impaired, which was deadly dangerous. Many knights lost consciousness right in the saddle before the start of the fight, simply unable to withstand the overheating of their bodies. Falling from a horse while unconscious in heavy armor threatened a broken neck or severe bruises. Historical chronicles have preserved records of tournaments where more participants died from heat stroke than from their opponent's weapons. To survive, tournament participants resorted to various tricks, trying to cool themselves down as much as possible before the fight. Squires kept their helmets off until the last moment, poured water on the knights, and created shade with special awnings. Some ordered armor with additional hidden perforations in inconspicuous places for at least some ventilation. Water was a vital resource, and its consumption was strictly controlled to avoid dehydration, but not overload the stomach. Experienced fighters knew to drink in small sips and wet the cloth wrapped around their necks under their gorgets. Any small thing that could lower body temperature by even a degree could be a decisive factor in the fight for life. Ignoring this factor was a sign of inexperience and often led to fatal mistakes in the arena. A tired, overheated knight became easy prey for a fresher and cooler-headed opponent who had preserved his strength. The tournament was a test not only of combat skills, but also of physical endurance in extreme conditions. The winner was the one who knew how to distribute his strength wisely and control his body's thermoregulation. It was a war with one's own physiology, which required iron discipline and knowledge of one's limits. And often it was the heat that became the judge who delivered the final verdict, which could not be appealed. In the next chapter, we will reveal the secret of how knights survived in chaos, where there are no rules and it's every man for himself. What I am about to show you is banned in 12 countries as too violent a sport, but in the Middle Ages it was the absolute norm. We are used to imagining a tournament as a noble and dignified duel between two handsome horsemen with lances, separated by a wooden barrier. However, in reality, the real test of survival was a general battle called a melee. In this competition, dozens and sometimes hundreds of fierce fighters clashed simultaneously. In this insane chaos, the rules of individual noble combat were practically non-existent. The concept of knightly honor often gave way to the primitive instinct of self-preservation and the desire to win at any cost. There was no place here for beautiful passes in front of the stands and elegant fencing strokes. In the melee, brute physical strength and the pragmatic tactics of ordinary street fighting reigned supreme. A knight could be attacked by 3 or 4 opponents at once, striking him from behind and from unprotected sides. No one waited for a fighter to prepare his defense or pick up a fallen weapon. The crowd of armed men became a single mechanism, with each trying to find a weak spot in his neighbor. It was a test not only for the body, but also for the nervous system of each participant. The main goal in the melee was not to kill the opponent, but to capture him for a huge ransom. This made the battle more like a thrilling hunt for live and very expensive prey. Groups of knights would conspire in advance and form alliances to act together on the battlefield. They would isolate individuals, surround them, and use brute force to compel them to surrender immediately.
We must proceed. We strike.
Such teamwork and coordination of a small detachment meant much more than the personal skill of an individual hero. Surviving such a terrible melee was only possible by covering your comrade's back and constantly monitoring the space around you. A lone knight, no matter how skilled he was, quickly fell victim to a coordinated capture group. Mutual assistance was the only guarantee of success in this chaos. A knight who fell to the ground was instantly out of action and in mortal danger. He risked being trampled by heavy horses or finished off by foot soldiers who roamed the field. Therefore, staying in the saddle at all costs and maintaining stability was the main task of every participant in a mass battle. Falling meant not only disgrace, but also huge financial losses and sometimes serious injuries.
For the Red Rose!
Weapons for melee combat were often blunt, but that did not make them safe in the hands of a strong warrior. Heavy steel maces and long swords still delivered devastating blows. These blows rained down from all sides, turning wooden shields into splinters and steel helmets into crumpled pieces of metal. In the thick cloud of dust raised by hundreds of hooves, it was extremely difficult to distinguish allies from enemies. This confusion often led to knights from the same squadron attacking each other. Smart and experienced fighters tried to stay closer to the edges of the battlefield, away from the epicenter of the battle. They avoided the very center, where the most brutal and uncontrollable melee was raging. Experienced warriors simply waited for the right moment when the enemy would finally tire or be distracted by another fighter. The tactic of waiting and conserving strength often proved to be much more effective than reckless bravery and excessive aggression. The so-called Knights of Fortune posed a particular danger to all participants. For these people, the tournament was not entertainment, but the only real way to earn a living. They acted as harshly and pragmatically as possible and never shied away from using dirty tricks. For such mercenaries, the melee was not a joyful celebration, but hard and extremely dangerous work. They needed to capture a rich prisoner as efficiently as possible and with minimal risk to themselves. The spectators in the stands simply adored this type of competition for its unpredictability and grand scale of action. But for the participants themselves, it was a real hellish cauldron from which one could emerge either rich or crippled. It was in the melee that a warrior's character was truly tempered and true combat friendship was tested. Mutual support in such a brawl could save a life at the most critical moment. After such battles, knights became brothers in arms for many years. If you think that nothing could be worse than a group fight, you are sorely mistaken. Like this post if you want to learn about a weapon that was created to break bones without piercing the skin. Want to know a secret that will forever change your perception of medieval weapons? The most dangerous weapon in a tournament was the spear, but not just any combat spear, one specially modified for these competitions. To significantly reduce mortality among noble participants, knights began to use special spearheads. They were called coronets and resembled a small crown with 3 or even 4 blunt prongs. These steel prongs were specially blunted and were not intended to pierce the enemy's sturdy armor. Their main task was to securely hook onto the uneven surface of a shield or forged armor. The tip had to grip the target tightly in order to transfer all the tremendous energy of the blow without slipping sideways. This turned the tournament spear into a powerful battering ram capable of knocking a rider out of the saddle. One accurate hit with such a spear was enough to knock a person out of the stirrups like a feather. The paradox was that by making the tip less sharp, the organizers made it more traumatic. The lack of a penetrating effect meant that all the tremendous force of the blow went into the person's body. This led to terrible concussions, severe brain damage, and multiple bone fractures under the armor. In a collision, a knight received a blow comparable in force to the fall of a heavy bag of cement. Moreover, this bag had to fall on a person from a height of at least the 2nd floor. The shaft of such a spear was specially made from light and fairly brittle types of wood, such as fir or poplar. This was necessary to ensure that it would break when it hit an obstacle with great force. The fragility of the shaft served as another important safety mechanism on the tournament field. It was designed to absorb the excess energy of the collision and thus save the life of the noble knight. If the spear had been made of sturdy oak or ash, the blow could have simply pierced a person through and through. In such a case, armor would not have served as protection, but would have turned into a deadly trap. The overall spectacle of any tournament depended directly on how many lances were broken on the opponent's shields. Long shafts splintering beautifully always caused wild excitement among the crowd of ordinary spectators. For each broken spear, the judges awarded the participants additional points, which could decide the outcome of the entire competition. But for the knight himself, each broken spear meant receiving a powerful blow. This blow was either to the body or to the head, which often led to loss of consciousness right in the saddle. The special design of the heavy shield, called a targe, also played a huge role in this exchange of blows. The targe had a special deep recess for fixing the lance and was rigidly attached to the warrior's steel armor. This turned the rider and his protection into a single monolithic structure, ready for collision. This attachment allowed the rider to absorb the blow with his entire body and the weight of his horse, rather than just his right arm. This largely saved knights from instant shoulder dislocations and torn ligaments when struck by an enemy's lance. However, even with such numerous precautions, the risk of fatal injury remained extremely high. An unfortunate hit to the helmet at a certain angle could easily break a fighter's neck. Medieval history knows many tragic examples when kings and powerful dukes died from such safe lances. Even if the shaft broke according to all the rules, the inertia of the body still remained enormous and destructive. Master armorers in their workshops constantly experimented with new shaft designs for tournament needs. They made the shafts hollow inside or carefully sawed them in several places in advance. It was a real arms race in reverse, where weapons were created that were supposed to break before killing a person. But the laws of physics are extremely difficult to cheat, and enormous kinetic energy always found its outlet. Thus, the peaceful tournament spear was not a toy at all, but a complex engineering solution of the time. It allowed participants to simulate real deadly combat while leaving them a real chance of survival. In the next chapter, you will learn how a simple saddle could be a source of shame or a lifesaver. Many people greatly underestimate the role of an ordinary saddle in a knightly tournament, mistakenly considering it to be just a comfortable seat for the rider. In fact, the tournament saddle was a highly complex technical device of its time. It was specially designed to hold a heavy knight in place at the moment of collision when he was subjected to blows of monstrous force. Such a saddle had very high front and rear arches that literally enveloped the warrior's thighs. This allowed the body to be securely fixed in place and prevented the fighter from sliding sideways. The rear bow was particularly high and incredibly strong, acting as a reliable backrest for a rigid chair. It prevented the knight from flying backwards out of the saddle when an enemy spear pierced his shield at full gallop. This design allowed the rider to withstand enormous forces without losing physical contact with the horse. In fact, the knight did not simply sit on the animal, but almost stood in the stirrups, being tightly clamped in the powerful wooden structure of the saddle. However, such a tight fixation had its dangerous downside. The saddle became a deadly trap in the event of an accidental fall of the horse itself. If the animal stumbled or fell dead to the ground, the rigid structure prevented the rider from quickly freeing himself. The knight simply did not have time to jump away from the falling carcass. As a result, the man was crushed by the enormous weight of his horse and his own heavy armor. This often led to severe injuries to the legs, pelvis, and spine. That is why the design of stirrups and leather fastenings was constantly being refined by craftsmen. They tried to find the perfect balance between a secure seat and safety in the event of a fall. There were even special types of saddles without a rear bow, which were used for certain types of competitions. In such cases, it was easier for the rider to jump off in time if the situation got out of control. But in classic jousting, that is, combat with lances, the use of a high saddle with powerful bows remained the mandatory standard. Special attention was always paid to girths, special straps that hold all the equipment on the horse's back. They were always made double or even triple, using only the strongest and thickest leather. The craftsman understood that a sudden break in the girth at the moment of a powerful blow would result in a real disaster. In such a situation, the saddle could simply twist under the horse's belly. Then the knight would find himself directly under the hooves of a running horse, completely helpless and constrained by his armor. The master saddlers who made such tournament equipment were valued in society no less than the famous armorers. A properly fitted and installed saddle allowed the fighter to effectively transfer the force of his legs and torso into the energy of the spear thrust. It can be said that this was the point of connection between two living beings into a single, formidable fighting machine. The success of the entire performance on the tournament field directly depended on the quality of this connection. Special soft cushions stuffed with horsehair or wool were often placed inside the saddle. This helped prevent painful chafing of the skin and slightly softened the sharp jolts during movement. Personal comfort was extremely important, as a knight could spend many hours in a row in the saddle. Any minor discomfort or pain could distract him from the battle at the most crucial moment. However, the main criterion in manufacturing always remained exceptional durability. In the history of tournaments, there were even special prohibited techniques that were directly related to the design of the saddle. Some dishonest knights tried to secretly tie themselves to the bows or stirrups with thin straps. They hoped that this would make it almost impossible to knock them out of the saddle, even with the strongest blow. This was considered blatant cheating and was severely punished by the judges if such deception was revealed to the public. The offender faced disgrace and deprivation of all rights to participate in competitions. An honest fall from the saddle was considered less shameful in knightly circles than an attempt to cheat the laws of physics and the strict tournament code. The saddle was not just a piece of equipment, but the very foundation of the entire complex technique of mounted combat. Without reliable and stable support, all the power of an experienced knight and his trained horse became completely useless. Thus, an ordinary piece of wood covered with leather became the boundary between a triumphant victory and a broken spine for life. What if I told you that the risk of complete ruin frightened medieval knights much more than the risk of instant death? Tournaments were not only bloody battlefields, but also huge financial markets. Colossal sums of money and valuable property were constantly circulating here. A humiliating defeat in battle meant more than just bruises, injuries, and temporary loss of honor for a warrior. According to the rules, the loser was obliged to give the winner his expensive armor and his warhorse. For any medieval knight, a full set of armor and a specially trained warhorse were the most valuable possessions. They cost a fortune, which was accumulated over many years or passed down through inheritance. Losing such things meant losing one's livelihood and the very ability to participate in wars. In fact, it was professional death for a nobleman. To get his equipment back, the loser had to pay the winner a huge ransom. Such payments could easily drive a knight's entire family into deep debt for many years to come. Many warriors, especially young and poor ones, often risked everything they had in life. They entered the arena hoping for one lucky and quick win that would change their fate. One resounding victory could instantly make them rich, allowing them to buy the best equipment and hire personal servants. But just one unfortunate defeat would throw them to the bottom of a society. After such a failure, they became landless mercenaries with nothing left but their own name. An entire industry of lending, pledging, and reselling always flourished around the tournament fields. Merchants and cunning moneylenders willingly lent money to knights against the pledge of their future victories or even their ancestral lands. This financial bondage was very dangerous and forced fighters to risk their health even more. They often went into battle with serious injuries simply because they needed to pay off their debts. To minimize such risks, knights began to unite in a kind of trade union or combat brotherhood. They agreed in advance to share all profits and losses fairly. This approach allowed them to insure each other against complete financial ruin and bankruptcy. This made it possible to survive a prolonged streak of bad luck and remain in the lucrative tournament business. Collective support was the only way to maintain their position in society. The winners themselves, in turn, often showed ostentatious generosity to the losers. They did not always take all the armor, but often demanded only a symbolic monetary ransom. This was done not only out of nobility, but also out of pure pragmatism. Everyone understood that a completely ruined opponent would never come to the tournament again and would not bring money with them. Maintaining a vibrant ecosystem of regular participants was beneficial to all professionals in the arena. High stakes in the fights attracted not only the fighters themselves, but also gambling spectators. The totalizator and bets on the winners were an integral part of every major show. The general excitement of the crowd greatly heated up the atmosphere in the arena, forcing the knights to fight even more fiercely. They understood that they had to justify the hopes of their wealthy patrons and fans. Financial success at that time was inextricably linked to military glory and reputation on the battlefield. The ability to manage one's personal finances wisely was an important part of the overall survival strategy. A knight had to be not only a brave warrior, but also a prudent manager of his own career. He had to be able to negotiate ransom amounts and choose profitable opponents for himself. Without this useful skill, even the strongest and bravest fighter would very quickly find himself on the sidelines of history. Luck in battle was fickle, but debts remained forever. Tournaments were a cruel and cynical business, where the weak always paid the strong and the foolish gave their last to the clever. The survival of one's purse was the first and most important step toward physical survival in the bloody arena. Without money, it was impossible to repair broken armor or buy a new horse for the next battle. In the next chapter, you will learn why knights wore helmets that blocked their vision and how this strange decision helped them avoid dying of animal fear. Among all types of tournament equipment, the most recognizable and truly strange was the helmet known in history as the frog mouth or steckhelm. This massive and very heavy steel structure was not simply worn on the head, but was tightly screwed to the cuirass with huge bolts. Thus, the helmet formed a single unit with the breastplate, turning the upper part of the knight's body into an immovable steel statue. The main design feature of such a helmet was that it completely deprived the rider of the ability to turn his head or even tilt it slightly to the side. The viewing slit in such a helmet was a very narrow strip of metal, located in a very unusual way. It was only possible to see the road and the enemy through it if the knight leaned forward with his whole body. This position was specifically designed for the initial moment of attack, when the rider bent down to the horse's neck and accelerated for the strike. But the most interesting and important thing for safety happened at the moment of collision with the enemy. A split second before the powerful blow with the lance, the knight had to straighten up sharply in the saddle, literally leaning back with his whole body. At that very moment, the narrow viewing slit moved high up, above the warrior's eye level. As a result, the rider's face was completely covered by a solid, very thick steel plate. Thus, at the most dangerous and unpredictable moment of the strike, the eyes and delicate face were completely covered by solid metal. This ingenious engineering solution provided reliable protection from sharp spear fragments that could accidentally fly into the slit of any ordinary helmet. The knight actually met the enemy's blow blindly, completely trusting in the strength of his armor and his correct timing. This required nerves of steel because voluntarily depriving oneself of sight before a collision is psychologically very difficult. It took a great deal of experience to perform this maneuver in time and not miss. The frog's mouth helmet had a characteristic forward extended shape, which worked as an effective aerodynamic deflector. A spear hitting such a helmet at an angle inevitably slid up or to the side along the smooth metal without causing direct damage to the person. The inner lining of the helmet was made very thick and soft to maximize the dampening of the terrible ringing and vibration from the impact. Without such a layer, a knight could simply lose consciousness from concussion after being hit in the head by a heavy spear. It was incredibly difficult to breathe in such a confined space, and hearing anything was practically impossible. The knight found himself in a state of complete sensory isolation, relying only on a very narrow field of vision directly in front of him. Strangely enough, this even helped the warrior focus on his goal, completely cutting off all distractions. Inside the helmet, neither the deafening cries of the crowd nor the flapping of flags in the wind could be heard. Only the rhythmic pounding of hooves remained. The total weight of such a helmet could easily reach 10 kilograms, which put a tremendous strain on the warrior's shoulders and back. But this enormous weight was a necessary price to pay for the maximum safety that the best technology of the time could offer. The steckhelm was a highly specialized tool that was completely unsuitable for real warfare or long campaigns. It was impossible to wear it for long periods of time, let alone fight in formation or maneuver. The use of such complex equipment gradually turned the tournament into a real competition of technology, and not just of physical strength. Whoever had better tempered steel and a more cleverly designed helmet geometry had a better chance of surviving. The knight slowly transformed from a simple warrior into the operator of a complex armored capsule. Every rivet and every bend in the metal was vitally important to the outcome of the entire battle. From the outside, such a helmet looked frightening, and even a little comical, resembling the head of a giant steel toad. But for those inside this structure, it was a reliable and cozy bunker that truly saved them from death. It was thanks to such ingenious inventions that tournaments became increasingly safe for the nobility over time. Despite the powerful protection, falling from a horse in such a closed helmet remained extremely dangerous. The knight could not see the ground and was unable to brace himself properly upon landing.
3.
Falling in a knightly tournament was not a question of if, but when for the participants. Sooner or later, absolutely every knight was knocked out of his saddle, and the ability to fall correctly was a vital skill. Training in safe landing began in early childhood, when future knights were still young pages. They were taught to feel their bodies and not be afraid of heights, gradually increasing the difficulty and intensity of the exercises. The main and most important rule for any warrior was to never try to put their hands out in front of them to soften the blow. With heavy chainmail gauntlets and the enormous weight of the entire suit of armor, this was guaranteed to result in instant fractures of the wrists and forearms. Knights were specifically taught to curl up, pressing their arms tightly to their chest and trying to land on their side or back. This allowed the force of the blow to be distributed across the entire surface of the armor, rather than concentrating it on fragile limbs. Armor, despite its apparent bulkiness, distributed the impact load perfectly across a large area of the human body. If a powerful blow during a fall hit the flat, steel plate of the cuirass or shoulder pad, the energy was simply dissipated. In such a case, the knight would get away with only painful bruises and shortness of breath. But a point blow, for example, with a knee or elbow against a random stone, could easily shatter a joint even through metal. Special attention was paid to protecting the neck during a sharp fall to the ground. The neck muscles were specially trained with long exercises so that the heavy head in the helmet would not jerk when it hit the ground. A knight had to learn to instantly tense his neck and press his chin to his chest at the moment of flight. This helped to avoid whiplash injuries to the spine, which often led to paralysis or even instant death for the rider. The ground on the tournament field was also prepared in a special way to soften the fighters' falls at least a little. The organizers brought tons of sand or fresh sawdust to the field, carefully loosening the ground before the start of the competition. Falling on hard ground that had been compacted over the summer was equivalent to falling on modern concrete. Therefore, the quality of the surface was checked very carefully by the tournament marshals, as the lives of the participants directly depended on it. The squires played a key and very noble role in rescuing their fallen masters. Their main task was to instantly run up to the knight, help him to his feet, or quickly drag him to safety. A motionless warrior lying on the ground in his bright armor was an excellent target for the hooves of other horses. In the heat of battle and panic, animals could accidentally trample a fallen man without noticing him in the dust. Knights often trained by falling from moving wooden horse models or special mechanical simulators. This developed a special muscle memory that allowed the body to automatically assume the correct position in midair. Their instincts had to kick in much faster than the human mind could truly become frightened or panic. Only years of practice made these movements completely automatic. Despite all the hard training and preparation, simple luck played a huge role in the outcome of a fall. A random rock hidden deep in the sand, or a leg that twisted under the weight of armor, could negate all efforts. But statistics from those times show that most tournament falls ended with only minor bruises and badly bruised pride. Professionals knew how to cheat death even in the most hopeless situations on the battlefield. The ability to fall correctly was as important for a warrior as the ability to hold on tightly in the saddle. It was a hidden and not very romantic side of the art of knighthood, about which beautiful ballads were almost never composed. But it was this invisible work that allowed many tournament veterans to live to a ripe old age. Survival on the ground was a necessary prelude to the most important goal of any nobleman, the survival of his high social status. How difficult do you think it was to get to your feet in full armor without outside help? In the next chapter, you will learn what secrets the tournament judges kept and why their decisions were law even for the most powerful kings. Until the 15th century, knights usually fought in a completely open field, without any physical barriers. In the heat of the race, horses often got scared and collided head-on, which inevitably led to terrible disasters and mass deaths of people and animals. The introduction of a special dividing barrier was a real technical revolution in tournament safety. A long and sturdy wooden fence, separating the riders' lanes along the entire length of the jousting field, ensured that there would never again be a direct head-on collision between horses. This barrier also gave the riders a clear and only possible angle of attack. It forced opponents to approach each other strictly on their left sides, which allowed all strikes to be standardized. This made defense more predictable and reliable for both participants. The knight's shield was always on the left, and the heavy lance was on the right, and they crossed over the fence at a strictly defined angle. This significantly reduced the likelihood of the lance slipping and hitting an unprotected area. Along with the appearance of the barrier, the judging system itself began to evolve actively. Official marshals and experienced judges appeared at tournaments who had absolute authority to stop the fight immediately. They closely monitored the condition of all equipment and the fairness of the techniques used by the fighters. Any marshal could disqualify a participant for dangerous behavior or an attempt to deliberately injure an opponent. The rules became law, respected even by the most high-ranking lords. The new scoring system encouraged only very precise strikes to the shield or helmet. At the same time, the judges severely punished anyone for accidental blows to the horse or for hits below the belt. This gradually shifted the focus from blind and brutal violence to demonstrating high skill and impeccable control over weapons. A knight who was able to effectively break a spear on a shield without seriously injuring his opponent received much more glory. Skill was now valued more highly than mere physical strength. During this period, the noble concept of knightly mercy emerged, which was highly valued by the public. The victor could demonstratively renounce his legal right to ransom or the opportunity to finish off his defeated enemy. This created an atmosphere of mutual respect on the battlefield and significantly reduced the overall ferocity of the battles. The tournament slowly transformed from a cruel imitation of war into an elite sport with its own strict code of ethics. Nobility became a mandatory attribute of every professional fighter. The judges also conducted a mandatory inspection of all weapons immediately before the start of each fight. They ruthlessly rejected spears that were too sharp, suspiciously heavy, or non-standard. This technical control was the prototype for the work of modern sports commissions that monitor athletes' equipment. Any attempt to bring dangerous weapons into the arena was punished with disgrace, a large fine, and eternal banishment from tournaments. Fair play became the basis of prestige for the entire aristocracy. The barrier became the main symbol of a new era of knighthood, which became more technical and less bloody. It was these wise innovations that allowed tournaments to survive for several more centuries. Even when heavy knightly cavalry finally lost its former military significance, tournaments continued to thrive. They preserved the spirit of competition, but did so within the framework of rules and mutual respect. Knighthood was transformed, but its essence remained the same, a demonstration of valor and fair combat. Over time, tournaments finally evolved from harsh military training into purely theatrical performances. Functional heavy armor was replaced by incredibly elaborate ceremonial armor, richly decorated with embossing and shiny gilding. Knights now competed more in the richness of their costumes and the splendor of their retinues than in actual martial arts. Each performance in the arena resembled a social outing rather than a serious test for a warrior. Aesthetics and glamour became more important than striking power. Spears for such performances were made of very fragile balsa wood or special hollow blanks. Such weapons shattered into dust at the slightest touch of a shield, creating a very beautiful visual effect. At the same time, the rider felt practically no real impact, which made the process completely safe. The armor itself became so specialized and uncomfortable that it was impossible to even take a few steps on the ground in it. It was no longer a real battle, but a grand costume show for the entertainment of the nobility. The main reason for the final decline of tournaments was not only changing fashions, but also a fundamental change in the very nature of warfare. With the advent of the first firearms and organized professional infantry, the role of heavy cavalry began to decline rapidly. The skills of knights honed for decades in tournament arenas proved completely useless against muskets and cannons. Iron armor could no longer protect a rider from a lead bullet piercing through metal. The era of individual heroes was becoming a thing of the past. Nevertheless, the great tournaments of the past left an indelible mark on the development of European culture as a whole. It was there that the modern ideals of male honor, nobility, and protection of the weak were finally formed. The concepts of fair play and dignified treatment of opponents were born in those sand-covered arenas. We still use many sports terms and rules in everyday life, the roots of which go deep into the Middle Ages. The culture of chivalry outlived the armor itself and continues to live on in our language. The knights themselves, who managed to survive that harsh era of bloody battles, became the direct ancestors of the modern European aristocracy. Their family coats of arms, often awarded for brilliant victories in tournaments, still adorn the facades of ancient castles to this day. The history of tournaments is, above all, the history of how man tried to ennoble the very idea of war. People wanted to turn senseless killing into a high and complex art, limited by rules. This striving for perfection and order made our world a little bit better. Do you think that the true spirit of chivalry has been preserved in modern sports? Tell me which chapter of this story impressed you the most, and I will be able to discuss any topic that interests you in more detail. We have seen that behind the glitter of armor lay a harsh reality full of pain, risk, and cold calculation. Knightly tournaments were a complex mechanism for survival, where engineering was intertwined with physical training and financial strategy. Surviving in the arena was an art that required as much intelligence as strength. From the geometry of the helmet to the ability to fall, every detail mattered. If you enjoyed this analysis of the hidden mechanisms of medieval sports, please share in the comments which other historical era you would like to learn the unvarnished truth about. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on new investigations into the mysteries of the past.